take 7. Anyway, nobody cares how much you struggle. I heard someone say the other day. So this is the book that I use for my planning. All right. This is for my watercolor, for my workshops, as well as my videos that I'm making. So yesterday I wrote down a little summary of the watercolor basics, and the 3 materials that we really need are the following. It's the paper, and we're going to use 300 GSM or a little bit less, and we're going to use the cold pressed. Then we're going to use paint, either the tubes or the blocks, and then the brushes. I want us to get at least one brush, a round one, I think, for the first bit. A mop that can function as a round, a rigger, and an angled or a sword brush. And I'll show you all of them, which I think this one is the most important, the round one. Although I love the mop, I think the round one, I figured out, might be easier to start with. Then I'm going to give us some exercises about how to apply the paint and to learn the consistency of the paint and how to control it on the paper. All right, and then we're not going to use a lot of colors to start with. I think it will just be easier to learn the basics of water control first. Okay, so the papers that we are going to practice on, I like the middle of the road paper, this mixed media paper. You get different brands in this, and what I like about it, per paper, it's not too badly priced. Okay, and then this one is a new paper that I've tried out, and it's cold pressed, so it's the middle of the road paper, which means it's got a slight texture, and also not too badly priced. And then this one, and I must say, if you buy it in bigger format, you can cut it into smaller formats, or bind it even in a book, which I'll show you just now. Now this one is only 200 GSM, but it does say it's ideal for light water media, okay, which means it's not meant for a final painting, but for exercising or practicing your colors and your water control. It's actually fine. This one, I got a tip from a lady that told me that, you know, it works better if you buy like an A2, then cut it into an A3 and 2 A4s, or an A4 and 2 A5s, and then bind it and then use it for your watercolor exercises. It actually works very well. So it works out cheaper if you buy an A2 and then bind it. Okay, and what I also like to do is to take different color pads, paper pads, and then bind them in one book. So I've got different types of paper in one book. I would recommend to keep the paper separate. So say for instance, start with a rough, then your cold pressed, and then your smooth, and then your mixed media, so that you have them separately, and you know, make them separate with another color, so that you know which paper you are practicing on. And you can bind them either with metal or with plastic at most big B&As or your printing shops, and it's not that expensive to bind. Okay, so those were the ones that I'm going to practice with. Then I want to show you the other different papers that I've got here, and they are already glued at the sides, so that they are stretched, so you don't have to stretch it. And just for extra information, we're not going to stretch our papers, we're just going to practice. Okay, so this is 100% cotton paper, and you'll see it's extra smooth, hot pressed. And how I think about it is like when it's ironed, so it's very smooth, and it's meant for detail work, and I wouldn't recommend that to start out with that. Then this one is on the other end. It's the rough paper, also 300 GSM, and it's got, you won't be able to see this, but it's actually got a nice texture to it. I have an example of something that I practiced on it, and I don't know whether you'll be able to see it. Probably not, but it's got a nice texture on it, and it's meant for nice spontaneous work, loose work, bold work. This one is again the cold pressed, which is the middle of the road. It's got a slight texture to it, and I would really recommend that whatever you use the middle of the road paper to practice on. Very nice to practice on. Okay, that's about the paper. Then about the brushes. I think for a start, buy a good quality brush, not a staple, a synthetic brush. Okay, so a nice round brush that goes to a sharp point is a very good choice, and not a very small brush. Like this one is a number 10, and I think it would be about 7 millimeters across. So the numbers of the brands differ. I obviously love the mobs. These are all different mob brushes, but I found that that with the workshop that I did on Saturday, that these aren't as easy to use as I thought they would be. All right, but I love them because I can take a lot of water. It's got a little bubble here, or a belly, and a sharp point, and it takes a lot of water. Then I like these cheapies, the Pro Art brushes with an angle. You get more expensive ones like these that also has an angle, and it makes very nice marks. Then a rigger is a very nice go-to for very thin lines. It's got long hair, and this one is not the finest one. This is a number 2 rigger. Yeah, and these are, let me just check the make, because I think this is Daler Rowney. They're actually quite nice. I must say, I do like the Daler Rowney brushes and the Winsor & Newton brushes, but Montmartre is catching up very quickly, and so is Dynasty. Alright, those are the brushes that you need. Then water containers. One with, I like to put in the sponge, obviously, because it helps you to clean your brush. You could also use a towel next to your thing to clean your brush of the excess color before you dip it into your clean water. Then just about the paints. These are just your metal tins or your pre-packed colors, like this one. Also, that's a plastic one. This does not rust. This does rust if you leave it, make it too wet. Okay. These ones have got extra mixing space over here, and each one of these little indents are mixing spaces, and you learn how to use them. And I think for the color exercises, whichever one you have, the pans or the blocks, use the ones that you've got and learn how to use them, because most of you've got these stationery somewhere at home. You could buy these little blocks on its own, and then fill your metal container with them, with the colors that you like. And when they empty, like this one, you can buy the empties as well. You can actually fill it with the color that you would like that. Don't fill it too full, like that. Let it dry and then work with it. I love working with this just like that. And then I would use a porcelain palette like this. I would use a porcelain palette and then work with that. The porcelain palettes are really, really nice to work with. You can also use a porcelain plate, or what I also find works very well is melamine trays. That also works very well. What I found with the workshop that I did on Saturday, that these ones contain so much pigment, and you might find it difficult to use it because you would try and use it like you would acrylics or oils. It will be too thick. But I'll explain it when I work with others, how to, you start with a very creamy mix, but you don't put that creamy just like that onto the paper if you're a beginner, because I think that's going to be a challenge for you to control. Okay, so we've done the brushes, we've done the paints, and we've done the paper. And that's, I think, for now enough, and then we'll start with the actual exercises as well.